All right. Good evening. We're learning tonight Daf Ayin Tes. In this Daf tonight, we're going to be learning about some more parameters about what's allowed to be carried and what's not allowed to be carried. We'll be speaking about certain shtarim, certain documents. We'll be speaking about the shear for which leather is going to be problematic to carry out. We'll be speaking a little bit as well about the mitzvos of mezuzah and tefillin and the different types of parchments upon which they will be written. We're starting about 15 lines or so from the bottom of Ayin Ches and Beis. I'm going to move fairly quickly tonight. We're going to be starting from Tan Rabbanan, maybe more than 15 lines, and it's at the end of the line. Let's get started. Tan Rabbanan, Amotzi Kesher Mochsin, someone who takes out a communication document for taxes, if you've never shown this document, it basically says that I've paid my taxes. You know, if you don't have your tax return, if you have yet to show it to the moches, to the tax collector, then if you carry it out your chayv, because it has an entity to it, there's a chashivas to it. However, but once you've showed it to the tax collector, then you'd be pater from carrying it out. Then it's no longer be'etzem, something that's chashiv. No, even after you've shown your tax returns to prove that you paid your taxes, doesn't make a difference. You still are going to be chayv for carrying it out. Why is that? Asks the Gemara, Mai Beinahu. What a strange question. What do you mean, my beinahu? My beinahu, we know what the difference is between. The question should have been my time. Some of them, unfortunately, pick up on this, and it's not really a my beinahu question. That's why, if you look at Rashi, the second of the, right before the wider lines, 2 lines before the wider lines, Rashi kind of repackages it. Klomar, as if to say, my plugtaihu, umahatam. What is it that matam knows them? What's the reason why? So let's get into the Gemara, a few shitas. Number 1, Amar Abaye, ika beneu rihite muchsa. The people who are mochsa, the people who are runners for the tax collectors, they would send someone ahead, and he would just do a quick perusal to make sure that everybody paid their taxes. And Rava says no differently. Rava Amar moches gadol moches katanika beinahu. There was the person who was in charge, and then there was a person who worked for him. So it wouldn't be the head of the IRS; it would be the person under him. They'd go out to the cities and make sure to ensure that you've paid your taxes. Ravashi Amar chad moches ika beinahu. When there's only one tax collector, that's the nafkamina mipnei shetzarich lo the haros lemoches sheni. What happens if in the future you're gonna need to prove yourself? I'm going to show you that I paid my taxes in the past to show you that I'm a reliable person. So those are the different shitas as to how we understand this source in the Tanaim, the machloket between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. 2 dots, 8, 10 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, Hamotzi Shtarcho, a person who takes a shtarcho, a document that says an IOU, that I owe you money, I borrowed money from you, and I owe you money still. So let's say that I take out a shtarcho. So let's see. If I've yet to pay you, the document has an element of chashivas to it, so then going to be chayiv. Misha pirao. However, once I paid you pater, then at that point the document loses its chashivas. And again, a similar machlokas. The Tanakama makes the distinction. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't. Rabbi Yehuda omer af misha pirao chayiv misha tzarchlo. And again, he says that no, you're going to have to hold on to it because there may be a need. And similarly, my beinayu. What is the difference between all of these shitas, these 2 shitas, between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Rav Yosef, Asar l'shahos shtar parua ika beinayu. The difference is going to be, the difference between them is Asar, that it might be forbidden for the lender to hold on to the document. Why? Because if I have a document that says you owe me $1,000 and you pay me, and I don't stamp it with paid, then there's a risk that I may end up accidentally, or even God forbid on purpose, trying to get more money out of you. So that's a problem, and that's the difference between the 2 shitas, the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbanan savre asr l'shahos shtar parua. It's asr to hold on to that document lest you collect money in the incorrect way. Rabbi Yehuda savar mutar l'shahos shtar parua. However, it is not permissible. It is permissible to hold on to that document. We are not concerned about that. Abaye Omar to Kule Alma. Abaye says it's forbidden. Everyone really doesn't have this concern of Rav Yosef. Abaye says no. To Kule Alma Asr l'shahos shtar parua. Everyone agrees it's asr to hold on to a document for which one owes someone money out of the concerns as mentioned that you may collect it inappropriately. Here there's a different machlokas. What do we say in regards to someone? Let's say I borrowed money from you. I'm the malve. I borrowed money from you, and you're the love. So I maskim to you. I verbally agree. Yes, I owe you money. Absolutely correct. I owe you money. So there's a machlokas. Do I have to prove myself other than my verbal admission? Tanakama, last 2 lines on Daf Ayin Ches Base. Tanakama Savar Mod B'Shtar Sheksavosh Tzarich L'Kaimo. He holds that yes, in addition to your verbal commitment, you also have to prove yourself. From Yehuda Savar, Yehuda was of the opinion Mod B'Shtar Sheksavosh Ein Tzarich L'Kaimo. No, your verbal commitment is sufficient, and you don't have to do more. But that raises a question in regards to the linguistics of the opening Tosefta here, about 8 lines up, that said Ad Shelo Pira'o Chai V'She Pira'o Pater. That's not what the Tosefta means according to this Shita, but rather only a question of whether or not you have to verify yourself. So then, because of that, the Gemara says, "Wait a minute. Why then is there a distinction in language in the source in the Tanaim at all? Umay ad shelo pira'o umishe pira'o. It's not a question of did you pay. He's admitting that he didn't pay. He knows that." Answers the Gemara, turning to the top of Ayin Testament Aleph, ad sheyomar love parasi. It depends on when the borrower would say, "I paid and I didn't pay." Take a look at Rashi, top Rashi on the page, Klomar, as if to say, "Ad shelo amar parasi," until I say that I paid, you're chayav. Misha amar parasi, pater. Once I say that I paid, so then the din is going to be that you are pater, because at that point it's no longer valuable. Top line Ayin Testament Aleph says the Gemara, a different possibility. Rabbi Amar, no. Even there's no machlokas. Everyone agrees that a verbal commitment isn't enough, and you need to be able to prove yourself one way or another to show that you actually owe money. Here we're talking about a receipt, where the lender, gives a receipt back to the borrower to hold on to as it's a stamped paid document to say that he paid. What's the machlokas? Tanakama Savar Kosvin Shover. The Tanakama says that you need to give him a shover. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Ein Kosvin Shover, that you don't need to have this document. You don't need to have a receipt. Rav Ashi, the fourth answer as to how we explain this machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi Amar Mipnei Shetzarach Laharos Leval Chov Sheni to Amar Le Chazi Gavra de Para Ona. Let's say, for example, it's like you go to make a loan. They check your credit score. So how do we know that you always pay your bills on time? So you check your credit score. What did they do back in the day? You'd have an old receipt that had a stamp on it that said paid. So then you'd say, I need to borrow $1,000, 1,000 zuz from you. Oh, show me that you're someone worth lending to. I have my receipts from the past. So that would be how, according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, according to the Shita of the Tanakama, that there would be value in having this shovar and having this receipt. Let's jump into the sugya of leather. We said in our Mishnah, or kadei lasos kamiya, we said that the shear was, in order to have enough, you'd be chayiv, in order to make a kamiya, as we spoke about amulets in the past. Some of them were made out of leather with maybe shemos of Hashem on them, others were made out of desha. Here we are referring to obviously the leather ones. So ba'minei rava me Rav Nachman hamotzi or bekama. How much is the issur of carrying it out? So says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Amar like it's not. Look in the Mishnah, or kadei lasos kamiya. We know how much it is. It's enough to make a kamiya, a very small amount to write shemos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Abdo bekama. Let's say I actually tan leather. How much leather do I have to tan to violate the issur? Says the Gemara, Amar le lo shna no nafkamina. It's always going to be the same amount of the amount to make a kamiya. What if it's la'abdo? I have yet to tan that leather. I'm bringing it now to carry it from my home through a Rishus HaRabban to another place. Says the Gemara there also. Amalei lo shna. From where do you know that this is true, that the shear for all of these things is exactly the same? Why do we make no distinctions in shear for that which is tanned, that which is not tanned, that which is going to be tanned? Why is it all the same shear of kamiya? Uminat timra, answers the Gemara, kiditznan, from another area, like we learned in our Mishnah, Daf Ayin Gimel, the opening Mishnah of, not the opening Mishnah, but one of the Mishnahs in Paraklal Gadol. We said that in regards to fabric, hamalabin, one who bleaches fabric, v'hamenapeitz, and one who combs it, v'hatzovea, one who dyes the fabric, v'hatava, and one who spins the fabric, shi'uro kimelo rochav sit kaful. This is actually the difference between here and here. It's this difference. Let's call it 1.5 inches. Kaful times 2. Let's say it's about 3 inches. So that's the amount that's going to be problematic, says the Gemara. And the Gemara says, lost my spot. Sorry. Sorry. Here we go. Shiro kimelo rochav asid kaful ve'haorek shnei chutim, and someone who weaves together 2 strings. Shiro kimelo rochav asid kaful. That same shir again. Alma, what do we see? Because it's going to be at some point spun, so therefore the final product has the same shear as the initial product, which is malo hasit kaful. So it's the same exact shear. So it says the Gemara, hachanami, by leather too, before it's tanned and after it's tanned. So we have precedence. just in legal terminology. We have precedents. We have a case where we saw by spinning the thread that it has the same exact status before and after the spinning of the thread. So too by the leather, before and after the tanning. Very good. So then says the Gemara, V'shalola abdo bekama, if the leather has yet to be tanned, what did we say? We said, Amar le lo shno, we said that the shear is going to be exactly the same. How can that be? For lo shani, there's no nafkamina bein me'uvad l'sheinu me'uvad. There's no difference between the leather that's been tanned and the leather that hasn't been tanned. How can that be? The Gemara is now going to present all the way to the bottom of the page till the last word. 5 arguments in a row, four or five arguments against this havamina. So right now we assume that untanned leather and tanned leather have the same shear, that it is bekamiya, that when you carry out the amount of leather into a reshus harabim that is bechdei kamiya, in order to make that amulet, you are chayav. Says the Gemara, let me ask you a whole bunch of questions. Esive, we know in regards to dyeing, the following is true. Hamotzi samanim shiruyin, a person who takes out samanim that are soaking in a pot, in order to make a stain on fabric that's sitting on a loom. So that's one shear, a very small amount. But once everything is already dyed, tanan, we have already halacha, klipe, agosim, and klipe remonim, sati supua, all of these are different sources for dye. There we said the shear was different. What did we say by leather? We said that before and after tanning the shear was the same. But we see by the samemanim, we see by the dyes, it depends. Before it's stained, it's one shear, it's very small. After it's stained, it's a different shear. So why over there by the samemanim are you making a distinction in the shear? But by the leather, you said everything is the same, lo shna. 5 times over lo shna, the shear is the same everywhere by leather, k'dei k'miya. Why is that the case? If by samemanim we have a difference between before dyeing and after dyeing, answers the Gemara, first of the longest line time Testament Aleph, because we have a statement in the Amoraim, a distinction to be made. No, no one would ever take a whole pot. They're going to boil up all of these different things to make a dye for one little piece of fabric. No one would do that. It's a waste of time. However, they would do that by a kamiya because there's value in that. There's no value in a garment that's tiny, that's 1 inch by 1. What are you going to do with that? No one's going to waste their time, but by a kamiya, they absolutely will. And therefore, this is not a good argument. So the Gemara moves on to another area of planting. There too, we see a distinction of before and after. So then why by leather do we not make a distinction of before tanning and after? Let's see question number 2, second line of the widest lines, middle of the page. Ayin tes, Amud Aleph. Zeruni gina, when planting a garden, the Mekamed is zeruni, before planting, we said tanan. Zeruni gina pachos micha grogeris, it has to be less than an amount of a grogeris of seeds. Yehuda ben Beser Omer Chamesha, he says it has to be only 5 seeds. However, but after you plant, after the field is already planted, the shear drops drastically. Tanan, zevel v'chol hadak k'dei lezavel bo kelach shel kruv. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, just one thing, just one stalk is going to be problematic. Just one little amount in regard of manure to feed just one piece of a leek. Tiny, tiny shiurim. Answers the Gemara. Let me just frame out the question actually. Why do we see a distinction by planting before and after the planting? Before the shear is larger, after the planting the shear is tiny. Make the same distinction by or. Why did we not make the same distinction by or? Answers the Gemara, beginning of the line, Itmar Allah, Amara Papa, Ha Dizriya, Ha Delo Zriya, depends what's planted and what's not planted. Before you plant, no one is ever going to plant something to build one stalk of anything. That's not why someone goes out in the garden. They have these huge fields. I'm just going to take 1 seed. Everybody move over. 1 seed. You dig a tiny little hole. You drop. No one's going to do that. That's not how we plant. And therefore, by zriya, by planting, we make the distinction. However, again, going back to leather, lo shna, we do not distinguish between the shiurim of carrying before tanning and after tanning. A little bit more than halfway down in the page, a drop more. Let's call it 3/5 of the way down. What about making clay? What about making bricks? To make clay, before you add in the water and mix it up. Tanya, we said in the Brisa, before mixing things up, if you have the clay and you're adding in water, there we said the shear is b'revi'is. However, and then we said, what is that dirty water? What is it good for? Answer the Gemara, in order to make clay. You add in this dirty water. The water's fine to make a brick. It doesn't need to taste good. It just needs to add some water to make the brick into the right shape, to make a solute and a solvent, to make it all work out. So that makes perfect sense. That's what Rav Yirmiyah says. That's what the water is for. However, Gilu basar de gavle, once it's already mixed, so there our shear drops drastically. Tanya, tit kedei lasos ben pikur. A tiny amount is gonna violate the isser. So the Gemara is very bothered by. Before you make the clay, the shear is larger. After you make the clay, the shear is tiny. So why by the clay do we make a distinction of before and after, but not by the leather? You got to answer the question. Says the Gemara, Hasam Nami there too, Kidei Amran, like we said earlier, a couple blot ago. Nobody takes this. You're making a tiny amount to clog up the top of an oven to keep it warm, whatever you're using it for, just to close off a kli. It's such a small amount. Nobody does that. You make a large collection of this type of clay. You don't make such tiny amounts. So therefore, the distinction there was worthwhile. However, by the leather, loshna, we do not distinguish between before and after the tanning of the leather. One more question, and this time the question's a little more acute because the question's coming from the world of leather. We've already asked our question from outside of leather. We asked from samhanim. We asked from clay. We asked from other areas as well. Now we're going to be asking from leather itself, tashma. Let's talk about the process of making leather 3/4 of the way down. There are 3 steps to making leather. The 4th of which is considered final, which is the actual klaf. But before stage 4, there are 3 steps. What are they? Matzah, v'chipa, v'difter. Step number 1 is matzah. We'll see why it's called matzah, v'chipa, v'difter. These are the 3 steps. Matzah kemashma'o. This is the leather as you have it. Dilo meliach, you have yet to salt it. Dilo kamiach, they used to add flour to the tanning liquid. They didn't add that yet as well. Udilo afitz, and they used to take the crushed a liquid that was the result of gallnuts, and that's what they would use in order to dye the food, to dye the leather. The kama shiro, in the stage of matzah, what was the shir of Isser for carrying out leather? Tana Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda kedei latzur bo mashkolas ktana. At that point, the shir was not what we said above. At that point, the shir of the matzah leather, the very early phase of tanning leather, was just enough to hold a mishkal, to hold a weight inside of that piece of leather. The kama, and what is that shear? Amar Rabbi, riva de pumpadisa, a fourth of a unit that they used to use in the city of Pumpadisa and Bava. Okay, chipa, what about the second stage of making leather? So there, the meliach, you did add the salt already, you began the tanning process. However, below kamiach, you didn't add the flour. Below afitz, you didn't add the liquid gallnuts. The kama shiur, what's the shear of Isser there? We already have our question because the shear is not like it was above of kedei kamiyah. Above, we said that the shear of leather, both before and after tanning, was that in order to make a kamiyah. What do we see here? Matzah has a shear of carrying out a certain mishkal, a certain weight. Over here, we have by the second stage of chipa, we have in order to make the kedei kamiyah. Keditznan or kedei lasos kamiyah. What about the third phase of making leather? Diftera. So there, demaliach v'kamiach. You've added the salt and you've added the flour. Below afitz, you didn't add the gallnuts yet. V'kama shiuro. What is the isser there? A way more lenient shita. There, look how big this page is. Kedei lichtov alav esaget. It's a huge piece of paper. Unbelievable. So the Gemara's question pops off the page. Katani mihas. What did we see in this case? What did we see in this source in the Tanoim? Katana v'amar Abai riva de pumbedisa. We see the shiurim are not the same. So on the top of the page, you said that the leather before it was tanned and after it was tanned lo shna. It's always going to be the same shir of kedei kamiyah. It's always going to be the same. So I don't understand. Why are you saying over there that it's lo shna, but over here we said it depends. If it's the matzah, then the shear is riva de pumpadisa, and if it's chifa in the middle, then it's going to be the shear from above. It's going to be kedei kamiyah, and the third shear, when it's already in diftera in that phase, then the shear is totally different. Then the shear is going to be enough to write a document of a get, a much more lenient shita. So why the distinction? This is a real good kasha. Answers the Gemara only took 2 words to undo this question. Hasam bibi shula. Here, it's where it's very, very ripe. It's very fresh from having been skinned off the animal. It's too moist to treat. And because of that, it's treated differently. So here is where we are so far. When the leather is brand new, that's this new source we've learned here. And then we look at the different phases of matzah, chipa, and diftera. However, when it's older leather that's naturally dried out, not yet tanned, there we would say there's no difference in the shear from before tanning to after tanning, and that shear would be kedei kamiyah like we saw on the top of the page. The Gemara pushes yet again for the final question. I think it's the fifth question the Gemara is going to ask about Tanan. We have another Mishnah that references leather explicitly. Take a look at this. We've learned this Mishnah before about Tumas Medras. Tumas Medras is when a person is tummy Tumas Medras like a Zav. So when he generates Tumas Medras and he sits on something and he puts his weight on it, so then that thing that he puts his weight on gets the same Tuma of him. It's a rare scenario. Normally we drop the status of Tuma one level. Here we don't. If he's an Ava Tuma as a Zav, then the bed that he sits on is also an Ava Tuma because of Tumas Medras. Let's see what the Mishnah says. 3 lines from the bottom. If there is a garment, it's 3 by 3, it'll become Tamei Tumas Medras. Hasak, if it's sackcloth, Arba al Arba. Ha'or, this is us. What about leather? What's the shear? Chamisha al Chamisha. Who said Chamisha al Chamisha? We didn't see that above. This is our fourth different shear, our fourth different shear for or. We had leather up top, which was Kimiya. We had matzah, which was the size of leather to hold a weight. We had the third possibility was diphthera, which was the shear, the larger shear that we saw, which was to write a get. And now we have another shear, 5 of Chamisha al Chamisha. Let's continue. The Mishnah Meifetz, if you have something made out of flax, Shisha al Shisha, bein the Medras, bein the mace, the Tuma applies both by Tumas Medras and by Tumas mace, as we saw a couple of blot ago. And we have the Amoraim commenting on that Mishnah, the Tani Allah. Interesting that the Aleph is added in there. The Tani Allah, we learned a commentary on that. Beged, ha-beged ve'asak ve'ha'or, kishir l'tuma, kach shir l'hotzah. So there we see explicitly that the shear of Hotzah is Chamisha al Chamisha. This Gemara is all over the map. We have shitas, literally 5 different shitas of Yisr Hotzah for leather. So how could it be? How could it be that we saw on the top of the Yamah that it's Loshna, that we make no distinctions between whether or not to say that the shear of before and after tanning is going to be, we said on the top of the page, that it's going to be K'dei K'miyah. Answers the Gemara, no, absolutely not. This last phase that we were just speaking about with Tumas Medras is not talking about regular leather. What's the case? Ahu Bikor Tovla, says Rashi, bottom Rashi on the page, Bikor Tovla mevashlo, that was boiled beroschen, umiskasha leshev, it's meant to be sat on. It's not leather like you're going to write with or leather that's going to be used for garments. It's leather for sitting, and it's a much harder leather. It's boiled, and therefore its status is different. Sikum hadvarim, here is how we would break up the Gemara into 3 different sugyas. Sugya number 1, top of the page, an older leather that's naturally dried out. It's not fresh. Over there, we say there's no distinction between before and after tanning leather. Sugya number 2 is when the leather is fresh. When the leather is fresh, then it depends on the 3 phases of the cooking, of the tanning. You have the matzah, and then the shear is mishkalo, the small weight that can be wrapped up. The second level is called chipa. There, the shear is like we had on the top of the page of K'dei K'miyah. And the third level of diphthera, there we would say that the shear is K'dei Lichtov get. What about the types of leather that you boil, not the ones that you tan? So there we would say that's different. That one gets a shear of Chamisha al Chamisha because of Tumas Medras, and that would be a short version. These last 30 seconds encapsulated the last 30 lines, and that brings us, Baruch Hashem, to the top. Yeah, to the top of Daf Ayin Tes Amud Beis. Let's continue. Klaf. We said in our Mishnah Klaf that a piece of parchment is Kedei Lichtov Alav Parshak Tana. It is going to be the amount that it takes to write a Parshak Tana. We said there that it's the Parsha of Shema, Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu, Shem Echad, through the pasuk of Uchsav Tan. I asked the Gemara Uraminhu. We have 2 conflicting sources in the Tanaim. We have our Mishnah, and we have the following: Klaf v'duchsustus Kedei Lichtov Alav Mezuzah. There we see that Klaf, parchment, and duchsustus. I'll explain what that is in a minute. There we said Kedei Lichtov Alav Mezuzah, but Mezuzah has 2 parshios in it, Shema and Vayom Shamoah. Our Mishnah says that the shear of the Klaf is Parshas Ve'ahavta. But here, it says in this source in the Tanaim that it's a double parsha, a longer shear. So which one is it? Before we get there, let's just describe Duchsustus. There is, the hide of an animal is double layered, and it's referred to as gvil. The gvil is the entire thickness of the leather of a cow. Now it's broken up into 2 parts. The klaf is the outer part, and we write on the inner layer away from the hair. The duchsustus is the level below that. So let's say there's 2 levels. My top hand is the or, has the hair on it on the top, and we write on this side of the klaf. This is called the duchsustus. It's a different layer, and we write on the top side of the duchsustus. But it's not the top layer, it's the bottom layer. So gvil is both klaf, duchsustus. Okay, good. Let's continue. So answers the Gemara. We have a stira in Tanaim. Answers the Gemara. No. What does this new source mean on the top of the page here? Second line. What does it mean? It says, my mezuzah. When it says klaf and duchsustus are talking about a mezuzah, what's it talking about? Mezuzah shevet tefillin. It's talking about one of the mezuzos. Seemingly, the word mezuzah means parchment. Interesting definition of the word. It's talking about the parchment in the tefillin. Ask the Gemara, but kariluhu tefillin mezuzah meicha tesi. What is the precedent to call tefillin a mezuzah? It's not. A mezuzah is a mezuzah, and tefillin is tefillin. Why did you just call the klaf of a tefillin mezuzah? Says Gemara. In fact, we do have a precedent v'atanya. And here we have a brayso. We learned about this on much earlier in the Masechta by the Yud Ches Devarim that were learned in the attic of Hananya, one of which was that they gave a status of food that was tamei tumas sheni la'ochlin if they put it near a Sefer Torah, because they used to store truma near a Sefer Torah so no one would touch it. But then animals would come and they were ruining the Sefer Torah. So the Chachamim made an Isser Derabanan that any food that touches a Sefer Torah would have a status of sheni l'tuma. And that also applies by tefillin. Take a read. Fourth line. V'atanya, the Brisa says, Ritzuos tefillin imat tefillin mitames yadayim. If a person has food that touches tefillin, then it will be mitame the yadayim, even the straps of the tefillin. Bifnei atzman in mitamos esayadayim. Ein mitamos esayadayim. But the straps alone are not going to be mitame. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Reb Shimon, Hanogeh b'ritzuataho rachiga b'ktzitza. Even when they're attached, you can touch the ritzuos, even if it was touched by food, and it will not become tamei tumas sheni, even though it's truma, even though the truma was near the tefillin. That we're not worried about. Until you touch the bias of the tefillin itself. Otherwise, we're not concerned. Reb Zakkai, a third shita in this Mishnah about tefillin and truma. Reb Zakkai Nishmo Omer. No, until you touch the mezuzah itself. What were we talking about? Tefillin. And what do we see? We see that tefillin, it's called the mezuzah. So the shita of Rav Zakkai redeems this answer of the Gemara that sometimes the word mezuzah can refer to tefillin itself. Very good. I asked the Gemara, we had one source that indicated that a parsha ktana and tefillin is the shear for carrying out klaf is a klaf that can handle all the words of Shema Yisrael. Mechlal, that implies that our other use of the word mezuzah, mechlal, the reisha, b'mezuzah atzma askinan. You can't just keep reinterpreting the words the way you want. The word mezuzah in this context seems to be really talking about mezuzah. So that line that we have on line 2 that says klaf v'duchsustus kedei lichtov alav mezuzah seems to really be talking about mezuzah. And if that's the case, we're back to our question, which is, what is the shear of carrying out a klaf? Is it for the one parsha of Shema like tefillin, or is it the two parshios of Shema and Vayem Shema like a mezuzah? Answers the Gemara, Hachiktani. This is pshat, 1/3 of the way down. Klaf v'duchsustus shiuran bekama. What is the shear of both a klaf and duchsustus? It's split. Duchsustus, the inner layer of the gvil, of the hide, that is kedei lichtov ala mezuzah. That's the larger shear. And if for the duchsustus, that is to be a larger piece of parchment. Klaf, the outer piece of parchment, that's kedei lichtov ala parsha ktana shebetfilin shishma Yisrael, and that's kafto raferach. That answers our Gemara perfectly. The kitzer hadvar, and the way we would understand this Gemara up until now is that the klaf, the outer layer, that piece of parchment will always be with the shear of the Shema Yisrael, the singular shortest parsha of the Arba Parshios of the Tefillin. And the Duchsustus, the inner layer, will follow the shear of the Mezuzah, which has two parshios of Shema and Vayem Shema. That brings us to the 2 dots, 1/3 the way down. Omar Rav. Rav said a very, very controversial din, one that's going to bug us all the way until we get to the last of the shortest lines, and that's where we're going to stop today. What did Rav say? Duchsustus harehi kiklaf. Now we know that that's not true because we just saw that duchsustus and klaf have different shiurim for isser. So what did Rav mean? We just said that klaf has a shear of one parsha that's very small, and duchsustus has a larger shear. So what do you mean to say that they're the same, Rav? Answers the Gemara, ma klaf kosfen alav tefillin. Just like, as we know, that tefillin are written on the outer layer of the hide, on the outer layer of the gvil, so too one can fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin with the parchment that's written with the duchsustus, the inner layer, kosfen alav tefillin. Yotze for both. I asked the Gemara, that's not true. Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Klaf kedei lichtov parsha ktana shebetfillin hi shehi parshi Shema Yisrael. And the diuk the Gemara makes is that klaf in duchsustus lo. Our Mishnah said that tefillin are written with klaf, not with duchsustus. So how can you, Rav, make an equivalence between klaf and duchsustus to say that they're both viable for making the parshios of tefillin? Not true. Our Mishnah implies otherwise. Answers the Gemara l'mitzvah. You're right. It's possible that it's not ideal, but Ladina, technically speaking, if you want to do the mitzvah right, you should do it with klaf. But b'diavad, if someone's tefillin were written with duchsustus, let's say they only had the money for tefillin to pay for the duchsustus, which may be cheaper, whatever the case may be, Ladina, that would be kosher. Says the Gemara, yet another question, Tashma. We have another source in the Tanaim. this is going to be a complex question. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. What do we have? We have a din halacha l'Moshe Sinai. No negotiating. What's the halacha l'Moshe Sinai? Says the Gemara. Tefillin ala klaf umezuzah al d'chsustus. That's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. You can't negotiate with that. And not only that, klaf b'makom basar. When we write on klaf, the outer layer, let's say this is the outside where the hair goes on the top, this is the klaf, and this is the d'chsustus. So we write the tefillin on the bottom side. The d'chsustus we write on the top side. So the writing's always in between these two layers, where the hands clap, where the two layers of skin meet. So that's what the Gemara says by the end of that quote of the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So again, answers the Gemara l'mitzvah. No, it depends. Lichatchila, you're right. Lichatchila, you should have it be that the tefillin are written with klaf. However, if you can't afford it, you can only afford the d'chsustus, it's mutter. Some of the Meforshim here are very bothered by this. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai is only a din lichatchila? Mehecha teisi. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai cannot be b'di'eved. It can't. There's no world for that. That's a big shaila. I think the Chassam Sofer asked that question, and other Meforshim as well. Nevertheless, the Gemara does answer this way. I says the Gemara v'altanya shina pasal. If you change it, it's going to be pasal. You can't change tefillin. Tefillin have to be written on a cloth. Asks the Gemara for yet the third time. Answers the Gemara that brisa that says you can't change it has to be talking about a mezuzah. What does that mean? That a mezuzah has to be written on d'chsustus and cannot be written with cloth. Asks the Gemara yet again, V'atanya, Shina b'zeh uvazeh pasal. In both cases, whether or not you change tefillin, namely to write it with a d'chsustus instead of cloth, or to change a mezuzah, to write a mezuzah with cloth instead of d'chsustus, both of them should be pasal. Says the Gemara, two different answers. Number one, idi v'idi, both of the words bazeh, there in this brisa that we just learned, a mezuzah. They're both talking about mezuzah. And here's how it would play out. How could they both be talking about mezuzah? What are the two things that are puzzled by mezuzah? Answers the Gemara. Remember, as I said, the writing's always in between the klaf and the d'chsustus. But if you write a mezuzah on the seyar side, on the top side, puzzle, the mezuzah is not kosher. So that's one piece. That's the first edi. And the second one is inami ad-d'chsustus ubemakom basar. Okay, you cannot write on the outside layers of the klaf up here on the side where there's hair, or on the bottom layer of the d'chsustus that's closer to the flesh of the body. All of the writing, ladina, must be in between on the top of the d'chsustus or the bottom of the klaf. So that's what edi v'edi means. Both are psulim by the mezuzah, and nevertheless, Rab, who said that the d'chsustus and the klaf are the same, can still maintain his shita in regards to tefillin, that we would say that b'di'eved d'chsustus counts for tefillin. Says the Gemara with a second answer, and with this we're getting towards wrapping up. Says the Gemara v'Yisema, 2/3 of the way down, Shina bazeh vazeh tanoihi. Really, it's a machlokes tanoim, and it's not this complex answer that both are talking about mezuzah. No, by tefillin and by mezuzah, one is not allowed to change it around. Let's see how we would explain this. This is just a machlokes. And we see the Vayisema Shina Bazel Vazeh Tanoi. The Tanya Shina Bazel Vazeh Pasol. The Tanakama holds that you're right. You're not allowed to change it, and that's a great question. So how could Rav then say that d'chsustus and klaf are the same by tefillin? It says in the name of the Tanakama you're not allowed. It must be that Rav holds like this last shita of the Tanoi. Rabbi Acha Machshir Mishum. Rabbi Acha Machshir. Rabbi Acha says it's allowed. You're allowed to flip things around. A klaf by tefillin can also be d'chsustus, and by a mezuzah you can even use klaf instead of d'chsustus. They both can work. And who did he say this in the name of Rabbi Acha? Mishum Rabbi Achi bar Chanina, or ve'amri, some say it was Mishum Rabbi Yaakov bar Reb Chanina. Rav Papa tries to give a different answer. It's going to get rejected. Rav Papa Omar, Rav de Omar Ketana de Be Menashe. Maybe Rav was saying like the opinion of the Be Rav Menashe. Let's see what that means. Rav Papa Amar Rav says like the Damar Ketana de Be Menashe. What did Rav Menashe say? The Tana de Be Rav Menashe Kasva al Nir al Hamatlis Psula. If you write a parsha of tefillin, or you write it on a piece of parchment, then for sure that they're going to be puzzle. Al haklaf, listen carefully. Al haklaf, which is the outer layer. The al hagvil, that's both layers together. The al d'chsustus, even the inner layer, kshera. So that's a great precedent for Rav, because Rav tried to say that d'chsustus and klaf are the same. The outer and inner layer are both kosher for tefillin. Here we have the sheet of Rav Menashe that he does include both. So it says the Gemara, wait a minute. Kasvamai, what was it that you were writing? Ilema amezuzah. If you think that this case of Rav Menashe was talking about mezuzah, and that's what Rav was predicating his shita on, that klaf and duchsustus are the same, mezuzah klaf kasvina. Nobody thinks that you can write a mezuzah on klaf. You can only write a mezuzah on duchsustus, on the inner layer. Elalav tefillin. I must be talking about tefillin. Good argument for Rav. Says Gemara. Wait a minute. Uletamech tefillin agvil mikasvinan. Rav Menashe said that there were three things that were mutter here. It's mutter to write tefillin on a klaf, on a gvil, and on duchsustus, on the outer layer, on both layers together, and on the inner layer of duchsustus. But nobody allows writing tefillin on gvil. A gvil mikas vinan ella. It must be that the shita of Rav Menashe had nothing to do with what Rav was talking about. It wasn't talking about writing on tefillin. And therefore, what was it talking about? Titanya ahi b'sefer Torah. That was only talking about writing a sefer Torah, which according to Rav Menashe is mutter on klaf, is mutter on gvil, and is mutter on duchsustus, on all three types. The outer layer, when both layers are combined, and the inner layer as well. And therefore, we reject Rav Papa's opinion. We fall back on the previous opinion that Rav holds like the second shita, the shita of Rav Acha, who's machshir to say that it is permissible to write tefillin both on klaf and on duchsustus. And we will stop here for tonight. Tomorrow we'll pick up with Lema. I have not yet figured out the Shavuos schedule. We have to make up just one blot because we're only missing one. And Mirza Hashem will pick up tomorrow night. Wishing all of you a beautiful night. If you have yet to sign up for the webinar, please fill out the link in the email and we can approve you to join, and you'll get a link right away. Wishing you all a beautiful night.